You're listening to This Naked Mind with Annie Grace.
Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Rachel. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Hi, Annie. Well, thank you. How are you?
I'm so good. So, thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us. Why don't you kind of take us sort of back to the beginning in your relationship with alcohol? Where did it all start for you?
It all started, like most people, I guess, in high school. I remember, drinking, not a lot at high school, to be honest, but I'd start out on the sickly sweet, alco pop type drinks, and after a couple of those, feeling all, woozy and room spinning and things like that, which was, you know, alcohol's way of saying you probably shouldn't put me in your body, but for everyone was like, oh my god, so it was that kind of reaction. So I wasn't a big drinker, but that was my first taste, if you like. And then when I finished school in Australia, we can drink at 18, but back in my day you started drinking younger than that, and you could go out younger than that, so I finished high school at 17. And so nightlife was, or socializing was, parties or the pub or nightclubs. Nightclubs was a big one. So, if you socialized, you drank. It was just nobody thought anything of it. That's what you did. So, and then I, in my late teens, traveled. So I always wanted to travel, and I moved to London and lived there for nearly 5 years. And I traveled a lot while I was there. And again, the socializing and meeting new people, or after work, it was, go to the pub, go to wine bars, go to other people's places. So it was always drinking. And I would never drink at home, but it was always, meeting people out and drinking. And I realized too that, they were big group situations and pubs and nightclubs. And so lots of people. And in hindsight, I realized that's not my preferred way of socializing with people. I like to be in smaller groups and have deeper conversations. And so on the introvert extrovert scale, I'm skewed towards introvert, but I'm in the middle. I don't know if you've heard the term ambivert, but yeah, so that's kind of in the middle. So you like to be around people, but you like, to recharge by yourself. So that's where I sit. But yeah, the big, the small talk and big groups, it just wasn't my thing. So drinking actually helped to take the edge off. I didn't think of it in those terms back then, but it just took the edge off and made me more comfortable and confident. And I guess in your late teens, early 20s, you're finding your way, all that sort of stuff. So but then, so I was over there, and I was with my partner for this whole time over there, traveling and working and going to other countries, of course, and came back to Australia, and we decided to start a family. So I was in my mid-20s and we had our first son, and my life changed a lot. So we went from this inner city London living, going out all the time, to back to Australian suburbia, in a house in the suburbs with a young child. And I just, I was pregnant, then breastfeeding, pregnant again with my second child, breastfeeding. So in that early stage of motherhood, I just I just didn't drink. Or if I could drink, because I wasn't breastfeeding and pregnant, it was only a little bit. So mummy wine culture just wasn't a thing, like not in my circle of friends, and wasn't really a thing back then. My kids are now, my oldest is about to turn 29. So this is, back in the day. So I look at it now with mummy wine culture, and I think, gosh, if that had been around, I probably would have been drawn into drinking more at a younger age. So fast track a little bit, and my partner and I separated when the children were fairly young. So they were 6 and 4. And I have a distinct, and we had joint custody. So I went from, I was working at the time, but, what kids at that age are like, they're just, full on. So I went from, having this full on, young children, full-time work, full-time motherhood, to being what I called myself a part-time mum, which is, it's not really fair, because even when your children aren't with you, you're still thinking about them all the time. But anyway, it was a difficult time, as you can imagine, and very stressful. And I remember, I have distinct memories of putting the kids in the car of my ex and being all happy and saying to them, this is great. And, because for them it was quite traumatic. And, and I was like, you'll have a great time. They loved their dad. Of course they did, So I was doing all that, putting on this happy face for them. And I remember walking into the house and grabbing a bottle of wine, going out the back. And I'd previously been a smoker. I hadn't smoked since having the children, getting a packet of cigarettes, getting a bottle of wine, neither of which I had done at home. I hadn't smoked at all. And that was how I would drown my sorrows. So, and that, when I've looked back on it in hindsight, that was one of the switches, I think, to change the way that I used alcohol. But in saying that, I didn't, I think because I just didn't have a lot of money, I didn't drink a lot really at that time, but it was that switch that went off. If you're feeling sad, if you've got these negative emotions that you can't deal with, this is a way to numb them. And, it was effective in the short term. So anyway, as I said, I didn't really drink that much. I probably started drinking more because I had a bit of freedom. I would go out with friends who were either single moms or were single, hadn't had children. And so I had this sort of double life, if you like. When the kids were at home, it was, mom and, responsibility. And occasionally I'd let off steam. So again, that let off steam was associated with going out and drinking. So then, fast track into their teenage years, and I got a bit more freedom because, it was just, they were a bit older, more independent. I'd met my new partner. We, the way that we bonded was, this is what I would have said at the time, was through drinking. And that would be things like, we felt a bit more sophisticated then. We would sit out the back on the deck and have these beautiful cheese platters and a beautiful, like, he loved his wine. He still loves his wine. And so, an expensive bottle of red wine or whatever. And so that was all part of that, connecting with somebody else. Now I know that that's, I connect these things with alcohol, and then that strengthens alcohol's power over it. But we were having that connection. We were having those conversations. We were having those moments. But that was still, instilling that belief that that was important for the connection. So this is all stuff, hindsight's a wonderful thing, going, working through you with your program and everything, understanding all these things. At the time, though, that's just, that was just helping to layer upon layer all these beliefs. So anyway, and we were around people who, again, that's how we socialized. So our friends all drank a lot on the weekend, and it was just normal. That's the normal way. But that's when I started to drink more frequently, and I was a weekend drinker, really. And so I did, the fact that it was increasing and that I was drinking more and it started to affect my health. Now, all through this time also, I'd always exercised a lot. And I, in my 40s and late 30s, I was doing a bit of running, a lot of running. And I would do 10Ks and half marathons. I did Tough Mudders. I would do all of those sorts of things. And after an event, I would finish that event and come home and treat myself with a glass of wine, and then the next glass and the next glass. And it was just so ridiculous. So anyway, so I was healthy, I was fit, I was working, everything was together. So it wasn't a problem, but it was kind of niggling away at me. So I started looking into reading around this area, and I didn't resonate with any of the stories about rock bottoms or, life's derailing or any of those things, because that wasn't my story at all. But I just knew that the way I was drinking wasn't healthy, and my tolerance was increasing, and that worried me a bit. In the past, I could drink X amount and feel not well, or stop drinking, and now I could drink more. And so that was worrying me, and I was worried that I'd have hazy memories of like the night before. My fitness was not, if you've been drinking, even if you've had a couple of days off, it affects your fitness. So I got a job where I was actually away from home. The kids by this stage were not out of home, but they had finished school. And I was working away, and it was a whole change of routine. I thought, oh, this will be a good time to change my drinking behavior. So I decided to take that 6 month, it was a 6 month contract, 6 months off drinking. I don't even think I planned for the whole 6 months, but I thought I'll take a few months off, and it ended up being the whole 6 months. And so it was a whole lifestyle thing. It was, I didn't drink, and that was all through willpower. And I didn't, I ramped up the exercise. I was eating healthily, doing all of those things, but it was very much from a place of deprivation. And it was like, almost like, I felt quite smug. I was testing myself, and I was like, yeah, I can do this, but it was really from a place of deprivation. So at the end of that 6 months, my partner and I went on a trip, and I thought, great, I've rewired my brain around all of this. I can now drink normally, in inverted commas. And so we went away on just a week-long holiday in this beautiful part of Australia. It's called Great Ocean Road, very scenic, beautiful. We stayed in this beautiful place. And, first couple of nights, I just had a couple of drinks, and that was it. And I remember taking a road trip from the holiday place we were staying, and we had to we were going to stop for lunch. And I was thinking, oh, I hope they serve wine there, because I wouldn't mind a wine with lunch. Then we went and saw, what we were seeing. And then on the way home, I was starting to think about, oh, well, I hope there's enough wine in the fridge, because I want one when we get home. What time do we get home? Starting to think like that. Is there a bottle shop on the way home? Maybe I should pick up something just in case. And then it hit me, and I was like, oh my God, I have gone from 6 months where, at the beginning I was thinking about not drinking, but after a while it just became, that was the way I did things. And within a week, within days, it wasn't even the week, it was within days, I had gone back to that, thinking about it in that way that I used to. And I didn't even drink necessarily a lot on that holiday, but it was that idea of it consuming my thoughts more than I wanted it to. And that was quite an eye-opener. But so then I was like, oh my gosh, that's not a good sign, So, and then it took me a number of years. So I wanted to moderate. That was always my plan. I want to moderate. Because this time without drinking, it felt like I was different. I'd been depriving myself. It was, it was kind of a bit, I felt good physically, but it was that social aspect of it. I knew I could do it personally, but it was that, I feel like I'm missing out. So that was the hardest time, because it was that period of knowing that I didn't like the way that I was drinking, but not feeling that I was at any rock bottom, that I was bad enough, again, in inverted commas, to quit altogether. So the only option, in my view, was to moderate. But moderation is difficult. So, and there's obviously, why? Very good reasons. Yeah, it took me, I would say, another few years then of trying and not, and just in this place. And I had a conversation with one of my brothers, and I don't even know how we got onto it. And he isn't, well, I didn't think of him as a big drinker. And he said, oh, I haven't been drinking for 6 months. We were in a road trip somewhere. We're in the car, and I went, really? I've seen you in that 6 months. And he's like, yeah, I know. I haven't made a big deal of it. And we'd had Christmas and lots of, social things. And I just hadn't clocked because he didn't make a big deal of it. Anyway, he put me onto your book. So I said, how'd you do it? Because I want to cut back. And he said, have you heard of This Naked Mind? And I said, no. And so anyway, I after that trip, I got the book and I read it and I was like, and just that different approach to it. So that was quite different to that 6 months. That's a whole different approach to thinking about it was what I needed basically. And that permission to it wasn't about giving up necessarily. It was continue to drink and to think about the way you're drinking and to dig into those beliefs that you have around alcohol. When I started to do that, then I started to unpack it. And that was when things changed. And so I did an alcohol experiment as well. And then I went on to coach training. And the reason I did that was because I'd been through those years of knowing that there was something that I wanted to cut back or stop drinking or change the way I was drinking, and not being able to do it and not understanding, because I thought, well, I'm so disciplined, I if I have a goal at work, if I have a goal fitness wise, if I have a personal goal, I can reach that. But why not with this? It just didn't make sense. So until I read your book and did the work. So I was like, I need to be able to do this so that other people don't have to go through years of going, what is wrong with me? So that's really my story.
Oh, that's amazing, Rachel. And so what was it that really led you to wanting to become a coach?
Well, it was, I enjoy my job and I still actually work in my job. So I coach part-time. And the reason why was because I wanted to give back. I've always been looking for some way to give back. But I think if you've had an experience like that, it is good to be able to support other people. And I work with women around my age. So I'm in my 50s now, but I work with women who are in their 40s and 50s. And I thought I was the only one who was going through it. And it is such a common thing. Now, even amongst my friends, now that they know that I don't drink, we talk about it a lot more. A lot of women, a lot of people, across all age groups, all genders, whatever. But the women I work with are, in their 40s and 50s, and it's such a common thing. And it is because it's insidious. Alcohol is insidious. It grows. It's usually a one-way street, and it's not a great ending to that. And people get stuck, and they're in the position that I was in, where they're like, I don't know how this happened to me. I'm a smart person. I'm a smart woman. I've got everything else in my life, and yet I'm relying on alcohol in this way, and I don't like it. And also, the older you get, two of the things with me were perimenopause. That my perimenopause symptoms were worse when I was drinking, because I wasn't drinking every day, so I could tell when I was drinking, the symptoms were worse. And COVID was the other thing. It was kind of like, at the beginning of COVID, it was like all bets were off. People were saying, well, I don't know, there was more talk around alcohol, and there was more, it was more of an excuse because it was just a stressful, unknown time. So people tended to, just say, you'd have a busy, stressful day over Zoom and people go, right, that's it, I'm having a drink. And I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm having a drink too. It's a Wednesday night and I normally don't drink on a Wednesday night, but I'll have a drink. So, it was every day, not every day, but my weekend drinking was morphing into pretty much every day. So, and so the women I work with are like that too. It's like, oh my gosh, it just crept up on me. And now all of a sudden I'm trying to pull back and it's hard. So that's why I decided to become a coach, because I knew that in-between period where that there's something, you don't like the way you're drinking, but you're shocked because it's not as easy as you think it should be. And a lot of people blame themselves, and your approach is around compassion. And that's the first thing I start with people. I say, you've got to have self-compassion. There's a reason this is happening to you. You're blaming yourself, but it's the way alcohol works in our brains and bodies. But the go-to for a lot of people is to blame themselves and say, what is wrong with me? I'm not self-disciplined enough to stop at 2 or whatever their, magic number of drinks. And it's heartbreaking because I know what that was like to be in that in between stage of knowing that you want to do something but feeling, I don't know, that it has more control of you than you have of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's so true, like the just feeling so one of the biggest problems I think we face as like this naked mind coaching community in terms of how to really effectively help our clients is it's that core thought that there's something wrong with me or that I'm broken. And when you consider it, one of the things that just blows my mind is this just so prevalent idea that there's normal drinkers and then there's alcoholics. And I mean, even in like the big book in AA, it talks about we are not normal drinkers. There's something wrong with us, right? And so that's kind of where the whole thing has come from. But if you look at it sort of scientifically right now, we don't look at it that way at all. We don't use the term alcoholic. We actually use alcohol use disorder, and it's 11 questions. And if you answer 2 of the questions with a yes, you have alcohol use disorder. 2 of those questions are, do you need to drink more than you used to get the same effect? And another question is, do you ever have a time where you regretted how much you drank? And every drinker I know would say yes to those 2 questions. So every drinker I know has alcohol use disorder. But when I started drinking, really like in New York as a young adult, I did not think alcohol was addictive to me.
No.
I was so convinced that it was just addictive to other people and those who are born alcoholics, some other people. And so not only do we approach the entire conversation without enough caution, but we really go into this blame and shame mode. And so I feel like so much of like our job as naked mind coaches is just like attacking those core beliefs, because when you have such negativity around this really positive change you're trying to make in your life, you actually undermine your chances of success.
Absolutely. And because I was a smoker, and also a drinker, I sometimes use the analogy of when you're giving up smoking. So if you give up, like I was pregnant when I gave up smoking, so that was a no-brainer. But well, I gave up before I was pregnant, but if you give up smoking, people don't turn to you and say, "Oh, wow, but you only smoke 10 cigarettes on a weekend. You're not, a pack a day smoker. Why would you give up? Why don't you just cut back to like 5 cigarettes on a weekend?" Or they don't say, "Oh my gosh, you're not in an iron lung. You're not relying on oxygen for, why do you'll be fine." Nobody says that. You say you proudly walk into a room and go, "I haven't smoked for 5 days," and people go, "Good on you. That's great, blah, blah, blah." And I was the same. Like I was more worried about the addictive nature of smoking than I was drinking. That didn't cross my mind. So yeah, smoking was a big one, and I knew that I had to stop doing that, and thankfully I did. But they're the same in terms of, they're addictive, the impacts on your health, they're carcinogenics, all those things. They're just, and they will creep up on you. So it's interesting, but that is a societal thing, and you see it everywhere, advertising, and not just advertising for alcohol. I see advertising that is aimed at, say, women in my age group, and you'll see these people in, beautiful parts of the world, traveling, and they've got a glass of, champagne or whatever, cheering their, travel adventure or whatever. And I often flip that and go, would they be smoking a cigarette in those ads, maybe in the 50s and 60s, but not now, to showcase that it was glamorous? Would they be shooting up heroin, but that you don't even have to say anything. You just have to have 2 people, clinking glasses, beautiful, or being in front of a fireplace with a, glass of red, or being somewhere and celebrating with a glass of champagne. It's just, I type, emojis come up now when you're texting people, and if you type happy birthday or something, the 2 champagne glasses will come up, or congratulations for your anniversary, 2 champagne glasses. It's just so entrenched. So yeah.
So true. So true. So this has been really great. How has, just in your personal life and navigating social life and all of the people in your, that you used to drink with or in your community, how has that been for you?
That was actually one of my biggest fears, because, as I said, like, by the time I decided that I would take a break, and at the beginning, after reading your book, I decided that it would be 3 months. I knew it would be longer, but that felt comfortable to me to say, look, I'm just doing it for 3 months. But I knew then that I was pretty much done. But that was my big concern. And so I actually put off starting that 3 months for a couple of months, because I was like, well, I can't do it this month because I've got such and such coming up, or I'm going away, I can't do that. So even then, cognitive dissonance, I thought, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. And then I had to go, well, what about, my social life revolved around drinking, really, most of it. And my partner did drink and still does drink. And one of his big fears, and my fear, was, will this all change you? And I said, I promise you, the only thing that will change is what is in my glass. And I've been able to do that. So we do all the same things. I will go out with girlfriends. We have what we call this ladies' lunch, which used to be a long boozy lunch. I still go to the ladies' lunch. I just have something different in my glass. We go out. We like live music. We'll go and see live music. We go out to dinner. I've got a big family. We do big family things. We do big family holidays, vacations, you call them. I'm about to go away on a vacation. Like, in the past, my first holiday, I was really worried about drinking. And it was an outdoorsy thing. It was sailing in the Whitsundays, which is in Australia, beautiful islands, Great Barrier Reef, basically, snorkeling, diving, doing all those things. So that's not a drinking holiday. I was still worried about drinking. But I had my line, I guess, if you like, when people said, why are you not drinking? It was because, for health reasons, I want to see if I feel healthier without alcohol in my body. I'm trying it out. And that felt comfortable to me. And then it would open up conversations. People were like, oh, yeah, well, that's interesting. And then I just kept going. And the big thing, mind blown, is that people don't care. Like, they're interested at the beginning, but now people really, like, if you're there and you're showing up, and people really don't care. So it hasn't changed anything really in terms of my friendship group. Some things I will leave earlier, because if people are starting to get a bit, repeating the same stories, and getting a bit loose. But even then, so that was my big fear, or one of my big fears. And even with my partner, it really hasn't changed things. So, and alcohol-free drinks aren't for everybody, but for me, for some people, it's a trigger, and they makes them want to drink the real thing. But for me, particularly at the beginning, they were a really good substitute. So if I go to somebody's place and I've got an alcohol-free bottle of, say, bubbles or whatever, then yeah, I feel like I'm not missing out. But that was a big surprise. And the other big surprise was that I actually enjoy things more, because I'm in the moment. I'm not thinking, like, if we're out to dinner with other people, I'm not going, oh, well, when's the wine waiter going to come over because everybody's drinking slower than me? Or, I'm just in the moment. And events, live music. I've been to a few live music things without drinking. I'm there. I'm in the moment. I'm listening to it. I'm not worried about, oh my gosh, I've got to queue for 20 minutes to get my next drink, or go to the toilet, or because you go to the toilet more often. Just, yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't actually need. That's what I was talking about before. The unlinking, in terms of these things are coupled. With the drinking has to go with socializing, or has to go with, connection, or whatever. Deep and meaningfuls, those drunken deep and meaningfuls with friends. I have better conversations with people now, and I remember them. I'm there for it. It's clear. So yeah, so that was a bit of an unexpected bonus that socializing would actually be better without drinking.
Yeah, and it's so true how just people just stop caring, or they don't care as much as you think. Once you get through the first few instances of seeming like they just care so much. So true, so good.
Yeah.
And I totally remember the deep and meaningful conversations that were just really, you couldn't actually. That's funny. I totally don't remember. I remember the idea of them, but I certainly even the next day didn't remember any breakthroughs or takeaways or any real forward momentum in my mindset based on those heart to hearts. And yeah, it's just interesting how that works. But that's so great. Well, Rachel,
Absolutely.
let me ask you, where can people find you should they want to learn more about your coaching?
So my business name is Inspired to Change. So my website is inspiredtochange.com.au. So the AU at the end because it's Australia. And so I've got lots of, I do a weekly newsletter, which is free, and some free resources. And then I do tailored one-on-one coaching with people as well. So, yeah.
Very, very cool. And then let's finish up with this question. If you were going to go back to Rachael of, drinking and feeling not as great as you do now, what would you tell her about what life is like now?
I would say stop worrying about, is it bad enough, and asking that question, is it bad enough, and just try it. And instead of asking the question, is it bad enough, ask that question, would life be better without alcohol, and just try it out and do it as an experiment, because the benefits far outweigh any negatives, and the negatives that you think that you're going to have, which mine were that I'd be missing out, that I couldn't socialize, that even taking the edge off, none of those things were true. But you don't know for sure until you give it a go, right? So it's just like, why not try? I know that's easier said than done, but why not try and see, would my life be better without alcohol in my system?
I love that so much. It's such a great reframe and such a better question to ask.
Well, and I think that's it. Your approach has helped in terms of, and I say this a lot to my clients, it's your choice whether you drink or not. But just, if you go through the process and understand your relationship with alcohol, I use your methodology, work through the approach, understand about alcohol. At the end of the day, you're an adult. You can do whatever you want, but don't you want it to be your choice and to be a choice that comes from feeling empowered, rather than you feel that you're disempowered, which most people feel when they're in that place. And so that feeling of feeling empowered and that it is my choice and it's a positive choice is such a different way to look at it, and does feel very comfortable and empowering.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's like, just that entire reframe, which, it's hard for people to almost conceptualize when they're on the other side of it, that this would be a better life. And so it's almost like you have to start this journey with just accepting that you're going to be hugely skeptical, and accepting that it's going to be a leap of faith, and accepting that, it's hard to believe when you don't feel that way, when you do feel so stuck. So it's great.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing your story. It was just really, really great and really awesome to get to know you better.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're ready to see how This Naked Mind can help you on your personal health and wellness journey and want to learn more, go to thisnakedmindpodcast.com to learn what your next best step is. Again, that's thisnakedmindpodcast.com. We have all of our free resources, programs, social links, and more available for you there. Plus, if you have your own naked life story to share, you can submit it there as well. Until next week, stay curious.